Scania 111 tractor units are pretty hard to steer when being dragged by a Fordson Major tractor on a rigid bar. I was called to price a job at a hay and straw merchant's yard a few miles up the road from our place. Morris Marina coupe ownership was adequate for the time being, though it did seem to give various people a quiet grin when I arrived on site. Maybe it was the moustache. Having passed the time of day in their offices and then been directed to what was on the to-go list, I drove the beige Morris half across the field at the back of the yard to where the lorry, etc., were happily becoming part of the hedgerow foliage. Fairly overgrown in general, it was hard to see what I was driving through. On my way back out and off home, the car seemed to be labouring, and there was a loud thumping on the floors underneath my feet. Pulling over into the pub car park, I got intimate with the gravel, crawling underneath to try and peer at whatever was amiss. To my amazement, the car's prop looked like triffids had taken root. The entire length of the thing was encapsulated by greenery. Thickest around where it entered the gearbox, a bundle of plant life about a foot across was making it difficult for the prop to rotate, bashing the car's tunnel and floors. Spending a good half hour with a penknife, lay on my back in the pub car park, got it all free. People kept staring from the beer garden as I tossed clumps and clumps of vegetation from under the old Morris. Making a start on shifting all of the scrap items acquired at the hay merchants, it quickly became clear I had maybe bitten off a bit more than I could chew. As well as the Scania tractor unit, there was an oversized 50-foot long Peak Arctic trailer, some bale elevators and various loose metal items in the grass. I made a load of all that first, and then came back in order to knock all the rotten timber off the trailer chassis. While sawing through this lot, I managed to saw straight through a huge wasp's nest. This was hanging down underneath and had been totally sawn in half. Little black and yellow buzzing bastards came out at a hell of a rate. I dropped the saw, leapt off the trailer and ran like Linford. A scrap man in a cowboy hat and overalls has never won the 100 metres, but I was giving it a bloody good go that day. Paul, my old motorcycle trader pal, came up with his cutting gear and we spent most of a day sectioning the huge Peak trailer. The yard forklift was then used to stack it into manageable section onto my old Bedford TK. Rather than cutting the Scania in situ, which in hindsight would have been the smartest thing to do, I decided since it was missing so many major components, like its gearbox, fifth wheel coupling, cylinder head, etc., it would be light enough to winch up the ramps and onto the Bedford. Bloody madness. It got halfway up the ramps before they started to bend like bananas. Hastily getting it back down, my father was then summoned along with our trusty old 1955 Fordson tractor and a rigid bar. At this point, I must add that the lorry still had the remains of a rather large bramble bush covering its rear end, this being somewhat entwined, and had it stayed even though when the lorry was being tugged out of the hedge, bush and the roots and all. I managed to wrench the steering round on the lorry to follow father out of the first lane and onto the A road okay, but it was then when trying to turn right at the next junction, I just could not get the thing round in time. The Scania shoved its nose into the edge, jackknifing the rigid bar, bending it like soft cheese, and bulldozing our tractor sideways, my father clinging on for dear life as he and the Fordson skidded sideways across the tarmac and into the ditch. Luckily, the arse end of the lorry was off the main road, so not to be a hazard for others. After much remonstrations and shouting at from my father, we pulled it back out of the ditch and got a straight pull and trundled off again. Squeaky Dave, my old garage-owning mate, lived just down that particular lane, and he was out washing his car. He just stared, shaking his head as we shuddered into view and then crawling past him, the brambles from the lorry's bush inches from his paintwork. Once onto the common, a heavy sigh of relief was had. With the big old unit stowed away in our yard, I got to looking round it and summing up what was to be done. I soon discovered why she was so much bloody heavier than I anticipated, as when pulling back an old mattress and some sheets in the sleeper cab, I found over 30 scrap lorry batteries secreted away out of sight. Evicting them onto our yard scales revealed the better part of 2 ton, with extra weight. No wonder the bloody ramps bent so easily, devious sods. Paul again came up and helped me section the truck, but this wasn't to be my only scrape with a tractor unit. Hello there! Thank you for watching my video. If you've enjoyed this one and would like to see a few more, please subscribe to my channel and also share. Really is appreciated. Take care. All the best.